Are you there?
Yes, hi there.
Oh, excellent. Dr. Berndt, how are you?
Good, very good.
Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. I have a good signal from you as well.
Hey, let me turn on the light here just a second.
Okay. Wow, this is fantastic.
Okay.
How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. It's a nice day here. Hope the same is true in Kansas.
It is actually a little warm for my personal preference, but that's okay. That's all right. So, first of all, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with me. I very much appreciate it, and I know for certain my students will as well. So, thank you,
Okay.
sir. It's
You're
very
very
kind of
welcome.
you. You have had a very long career, and I tell my kids, do your homework. So I've done some of my homework to try and read up as much as I can. Um, uh, and so I just I just want to know a little bit. I know you went to a relatively small college, um, and from there, how did you decide? Actually, before any of that, what I guess what inspired you to become a real mathematician, an actual, real living mathematician?
Well, actually, I entered Albion College with the intention of majoring in physics.
Oh, okay.
And um, at the end of my first year, I decided to go into mathematics. There were two people in class who were much better at physics than I was, one of whom is a lifelong friend I keep in contact with. And then I decided I really liked mathematics better than physics anyway. So at that time, I decided to major in mathematics.
Okay. Was there any particular I, was there like was there any particular type, or I guess type of problems, or like I say realm of mathematics, like branch of mathematics, that when you that I mean just got you hook, line, and sinker? Like what really got you?
Okay, so at that time, I just had calculus in my first year. So there really wasn't anything in particular that I can point to. I mean, I just enjoyed calculus very much, and I had a great teacher. His name is Keith Moore, and he got his PhD at the University of Kansas.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah,
Oh, wow.
so he was undoubtedly the most influential person in my career. Uh,
Wow.
I he I took several courses from him at Albion. He was a wonderful teacher. Um, he played the oboe. I love classical music, and I thought, this is the kind of person I would like to emulate. And so Keith Moore was a great influence on my life.
So it's famous, like when people I lump you in with these incredibly brilliant minds, and when I think of somebody like, Einstein would get stuck, he would go into another room and play the violin, and it would clear things up for him. Did you ever have anything like that whenever you would get stuck thinking about a problem, or you find yourself in a logical loop? Is there anything that you ever did to kind of, I guess, propel you out of that so that you could continue working on problems?
Well, yeah, I get stuck all the time. Often, so it used to be when I was running, but because of a knee injury, I don't run anymore. I walk a lot. So often when I ran or when I walk, my thoughts will turn to a problem I'm working on because I can't get my mind off of it. And frequently, well, maybe not as frequent as I would like, the I get an idea. So in other words, I it's good to get away from a problem for a while even if it's only a few hours. And that's very helpful. Sometimes I just sit at my desk and, grind away for 2 or 3 hours and not get anywhere. But if I just leave my desk and go out and take a walk or something, sometimes that works. So,
The, so, so I'm trying to think of a great way of transitioning to this question. So I teach high school students, and I'm really interested in history as well. And
Mhm.
so that's what came up with this idea of having a teaching the not the history of mathematics, but introducing mathematicians. And of course, is it pronounced Ramanujan or Ramanujan? How do you pronounce his name?
the first is closer. uh,
Ramanujan?
Ramanujan, yeah.
Ramanujan. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I will do my best to try and keep that sorted.
Well, it's hard for us to say it correctly, and I'm not sure I say it correctly because in India, there aren't emphases on syllables. So in other words, it's even Ramanujan. So we in the West, when we say a name like that, it's you know inevitable we emphasize a syllable.
Right.
So I probably am not, when I say Ramanujan, I'm still sort of emphasizing the second syllable a bit, not the way it should be, but
Yeah. That's it. That is interesting. I saw that you got an honorary doctorate from a college in India. Did you spend time in India then researching and studying his work?
I've actually been to India 11 times.
Oh wow.
And the place where I got this honorary doctorate at Shastra University, it's actually in Kumbakonam, Ramanujan's hometown.
Really?
So you mentioned your interest in history.
Yes.
Um, when I was at Albion, I actually had a course in history of mathematics.
Really?
I think, let's see, what was I forgot the name of the text. It's been a while since that. And anyway, so my work with Ramanujan uh, sort of naturally leads me into the history of mathematics because some of what Ramanujan did was known at that time, and so I'm compelled then to go back and find it. So I'm, over the last 50 years, I've, had to go back in the literature many, many times. So being interested in devoting all my life to Ramanujan's work, this naturally gave me a strong interest in the history of mathematics as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And now I have very like I can't even say I've scratched the surface of it all, but what little I have read, you mentioned is interesting because he when he was writing different professors, throughout the world trying to get anywhere,
Mm.
he put in a proof about how an infinite series sum to like -1/12 or something of that nature. And professors would look at it and say, "Oh, this is absurd." But Godfrey Hardy found it, and it actually was the same conclusion that Euler had made.
Mm.
So is that what you're finding? Is that there's some greats like Euler or Fermat that have a tendency? Are those do those patterns show up? Are there certain individuals that show up more often than other individuals in his work?
Yeah, historically, I would say that Euler is the person whose mathematics, you know, permeated. Well, I mean, Ramanujan, rediscovered a number of results of Euler. Let me just put it simply that way.
Yeah.
The result that you mentioned, so yeah, it has, sort of an explanation. So I don't know if there's what's called the Riemann zeta function,
Correct.
and it has a well-known evaluation in terms of a rational number times the power of pi. Now, so this is, say, for power n greater than or equal to 2. Well, the Riemann zeta function satisfies what's called a functional equation. So it relates zeta of s and zeta of 1 minus s. So if you just sort of plug in the functional equation so that you get zeta of minus 1 there. So what that turns out to be is the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 dot dot dot, and zeta of minus 1 is a minus a 12th. So it's a sum of a divergent series, but you get it by formally, putting in the functional equation, and you're not supposed to do this, it's wrong, but you get zeta of minus 1, which is 1 plus 2 plus 3, etc., and it comes out minus a 12th. But so there is an explanation. So this is part of Ramanujan's theory of divergent series. And it turns out that recently this theory of divergent series actually has had applications in modern physics, and particular theory of black holes and string theory. And so this is, an area of Ramanujan's mathematics that I didn't think would ever have any applications, but here in the last few years or so, this type of thing appears and is useful in physics. So.
Wow. And so I don't know where I've seen or read this before, but it's this idea that, why solve, some crazy conjecture from Hilbert that has, something to do with primes or whatever. It has no real application. And then the answer from the mathematician is always, we don't know the application yet. We just proved it to be true. We're going to let some physicist, maybe 100 years or 150 years down the line, go back and see that and go, oh, well, that applies to what I'm working on. And that's interesting that you've had like a firsthand experience in looking at Ramanujan's work and seeing it applied to the physics now. I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. This is how, sciences, physics, mathematics operate. Another example I learned of just, I think it was 4 years ago, there are these sums called Ramanujan sums, and I heard a lecture in London where these are applicable in radiation theory. And so, I never would have, guessed that this would happen at all. And
Right. That is, I find that to be absolutely fascinating. So would you consider, clearly you've dedicated a grand portion of your career to studying his works. But it also, from what I've been able to gather, you've done work in number theory as well.
Well, yes. So Ramanujan is really a number theorist,
True.
and so my background for my PhD was in number theory, and so I began my research here at the University of Illinois in number theory. So this I I can tell you actually the history of how I got interested in
Yeah,
Ramanujan.
please.
Yeah. So it was my second or third year here at Illinois. The head of the department was Paul Bateman, who was a very famous, well-known analytic number theorist. And one day he got 2 papers by Emil Grosswald to referee. And being very busy as head of the department, and I being junior faculty member in either my second or third year at Illinois, he gave them to me to referee.
Wow.
And in these two papers by Emil Grosswald, he proved some formulas from Ramanujan's notebooks. And so I recommended accepting the papers, and I didn't think anything more about it. And then I had my first sabbatical at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. And in one day in February of 1974, at the Institute, I suddenly realized in the work that I was doing, I could prove these formulas that Emil Grosswald had proved in his two papers. So this was an enormous revelation for me. I was very excited that my own work led me to Ramanujan's work. And so I was naturally interested if I could find further results from Ramanujan's notebooks that I could prove. So fortunately, the Princeton University Library had a photostat copy of the notebooks that was made in 1957 by the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Bombay. So I sent for a copy of these, found a few more formulas that I could prove, but then a few thousand others I didn't know how to prove. So for the next couple of years, I just sort of worked on the methods I had developed at Princeton. But then I think it was in at the end of the spring semester in 1976, I said to myself, let's see if I can prove all the formulas in chapter 14 of Ramanujan's second notebook.
Oh, wow.
So I chose this because this was the chapter in which the formulas that Grosswald had proved or found. So I had a head start.
Sure.
So I worked on this for over a year, and I was helped on a few formulas by my PhD student, Ron Evans. And so altogether, there are 87 results in this chapter. So again, it took me about a year and a half, actually, with help of Ron Evans to prove all of these results. Hi there.
Hey, hey,
What is your name?
what's your name? Louis. This is my son, Louis. He just got out of school.
Willie?
Louis.
Louis. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Say hi.
Hi, Louis.
Hi.
All right, bud. Hey, I'm talking. This is Dr. Berndt. I'm having a conversation with him, and then when I'm done, we can go home. Okay. All right, go. Dr. Berndt. Hey, can you do that? Hey, Louis, can you do that at the other desk? Listen, can you go do the other desk? Just for a few more minutes, okay? All right. So, I apologize.
That's all right.
As a school teacher, you kind of do the best you can, right?
That's right.
So were there anything that you were doing when you were 14, 15 years old? I want to kind of take you back to when you were a teenager, early to mid-teens. Were there any thoughts or ideas that you had at that time that kind of have led to the career that you're having now?
None.
None. So
No.
so you were worried about, playing baseball and hanging out with friends and
You got it.
love
I
it.
was interested in sports, as a kid, and I wasn't very good at baseball. I mean, I didn't think of it at the time why, but I have very little sight in my left eye.
Oh, wow.
And so I don't have much depth perception. So I was always very poor at baseball, even though I loved to play.
Sure.
And anyway, in high school, I played football and ran track. And so I so the main thing about my athletic career was that I was quite fast. And I actually was a state of Michigan quarter mile champion when I was in high school.
Hey, there you go. Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I know you said you run whenever you think when
Yeah.
you're running, it turns into thinking. So that I'm sure has been a lifelong journey there. So that's really interesting. I kind of love hearing that because I guess earlier this afternoon I talked to Pierre Deline.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with him or his work, but
Oh, yes, he's in a different area of mathematics than I am, but yeah, he's very well known, and yeah, I can't say I understand his work, but I know what kind of work he does.
I feel so okay. I feel a lot better because he yeah, his work it's incredible. When he won the Abel Prize, he gave a lecture about I even wrote it down, the symmetries of algebraic varieties, which I don't know
Mm.
what that means. And I it's a 49-minute lecture, and by minute 4, I was gone. He lost me. So but I was really proud to make it to the 4th minute. So um
I
I
probably wouldn't have gotten that far.
well, I'm glad to know that you can still find success in mathematics, even though you know, there's completely different branches. Um, so what I tell my students is that, there are, there are different branches of mathematics, algebraic geometry being one of them, the marriage of algebra and geometry, which seems a lot more simple than what it really is. That's when it gets into groups and rings and things, and that's where I start to lose my mind. But number theory really is fascinating because it seems like it's a very low entry, but with a very high ceiling. So explaining a prime number is fairly simple, and my 7-year-old can figure out a prime number, but the study of prime numbers can go so beyond, you know, a lot of our realms of capability. Uh, so like with Ramanujan being more specific towards number theory, what uh, do you find that some of it is like the entry into the work is understandable, but then at some point it has to get extraordinarily difficult?
Okay, well, there are lots of subjects within number theory and lots of directions in which you could go.
Oh,
And um, if wants to learn more about Ramanujan's interest in number theory, uh, one place to look are the problems that Ramanujan submitted to the Journal of the Indian Mathematical Society. So he submitted a total of 58 such problems, and I actually wrote a paper with two of my former students, Suni Kang and Yunsa Che, um, detailing all that is known about these problems. So many of those are very easy to understand, and some of them are unsolved. We don't know the answer to them, you
wow.
know. So yeah, so that yeah, so if you have trouble, I'll tell you where you can find that article.
Yeah, please.
There is a book called Ramanujan colon essays and surveys. So it's edited by Robert Rankin and myself. So in that book is a reprint of the article I wrote with my two former graduate students, Suni Kang and Yunsa Che, on all of the problems that Ramanujan submitted to the Journal of the Indian Mathematical Society. So you'll see some there which are very easy to state, but which are very challenging. And as I said, maybe unsolved.
Right.
So,
That kind of it makes me think of like Fermat's last theorem, right? It's
mm,
very simple. I quite simple to state, but
mm,
of course it took Weil 7 years to figure it out, and all sorts of wild modern mathematics in order to figure it out. That's incredible.
And also, some of the problems that Ramanujan submitted are just on algebra, elementary algebra,
Yeah.
identities and solving equations. And but you won't find these easy. In other words, what Ramanujan submitted as problems. So there are a number of things there that you can give your students and tell your students about. They'll be able to get some challenges there.
Okay. That is a challenge accepted. I will definitely do that.
Okay, if you have trouble finding the article, let me know and I can be more precise. Or
Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. And lastly, before I let you go, just I realize you spent your whole career working with on this man's work. He died at 33 years old, I believe.
32.
32. Which it just feels like I'm 40 now, and I can barely write my name half the time on my papers, and I'm thinking this man he did thousands upon thousands of work. The only other person that I've studied or even looked at in history would be Euler, that comes even close to that. That just sheer volume of mathematics that was produced. Do you ever find yourself, like, whenever you're working with his notes or going through his books or going through papers that you've found, do you ever find yourself just getting lost in just the enormity and in awe of the fact that he was able to accomplish this in a matter of less than 20 years?
Okay, well, I'm in awe constantly about what he does. I say to myself, how did he ever think of this? And in fact, I just wrote one of my former graduate students this morning. We were talking about what are called modular equations. Ramanujan discovered many of these. And when I was working on these in the 1990s, with the help of my former student, Henghua Chan, I was unable to prove many of these using mathematics that Ramanujan would have known. So I had to resort to what is called the theory of modular forms. And so with the help of Chan, I was able to prove all the rest of Ramanujan's modular equations using the theory of modular forms. But Ramanujan didn't know anything about the theory of modular forms. Much of it hadn't been invented when he was when he lived. So I mentioned to Chan that's still bugging me. Just in the past week or two, I've returned to what I call modular equations of degree 11 of Ramanujan, and I'm still completely in the dark. I have no idea how he would have proved these equations. And again, there are many more of these equations that, I just have not been able, nor has anyone else, been able to find proofs that Ramanujan, might have found. So,
I mean, that is very much parallel to the Fermat. I have an eloquent proof, but I couldn't fit it in the margins, and yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating that there's parallels there between, what they were able to think of, but without the use of modern mathematics.
Yeah, so in his notebooks, Ramanujan stated, one equation after another, these modular equations, and no hint at all as to how he ever proved them. But they're all correct. So in other words, we were able to prove them using, mathematics that Ramanujan wouldn't have known about.
Right. So he didn't. As a high school math teacher, you're saying he didn't show his steps. He didn't show his work.
Yeah. So see, in the notebooks which I had been working on, for many years,
Yeah,
but there are no proofs.
right.
So it's up to me or others to find proofs of the statement. So in other words, just one formula or statement after another with no proofs.
And you would spend days, weeks, months. How long do these problems take you to prove?
I mean, it all depends. Some are easier than others, but some I spend years on, and it varies considerably.
Sure, sure,
So I started editing. So I call it editing because there is an editing part of this, because if a result is known, as I sort of indicated earlier, it's up to me to find out where it's proved, and so I have to do a lot of digging out of the literature and historical work to find it. So in that sense, I use editing in the contemporary sense.
sure.
So I worked on this from about 1976 to 1999. So a bit over 20 years, I worked on proving the results in Ramanujan's notebooks. I counted them, chapter by chapter as I, worked my way through over the years, and I counted 3,254, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
So,
Wow. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Well, Dr. Berndt, I cannot can't thank you enough for your time today. I very much appreciate it and just getting this opportunity to speak with you and to hear you share some of your experiences with me and my students. I very much appreciate it. Um, you your time is not taken for granted, and I just want to say thank you for this opportunity.
oh, you're very welcome, and I'm glad to talk about Ramanujan and his mathematics anytime. So if you have any further questions or you want further information, just please let me know.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, well,
Uh,
thank you so much. And uh, uh you might regret saying that because I might just start picking your brain.
don't worry about it.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your time.
Okay, you're
Have a good
welcome.
day. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.